Hello. I believe we can start the side events. Good morning again, good afternoon, good evening. I know we are coming from different parts of the world. This is to welcome you all to this side event dubbed Reinforcing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and Agenda 2063 at the Summit of the Future for Networked and Inclusive Multilateralism. And so it's a great pleasure to be your moderator. My name is Florence Sievuo. I am the co-chair of the C4UN, the Coalition for the UN We Need, and also the executive director of the SDG Kenya Forum. And I believe this is a very, very great topic today with great lined up speakers, and you're all in for a very, very great session. Hopefully we'll be able to go back with a lot of insights and also some of the things that we need to do. And so I know colleagues are still joining, and so, just to save on time, we'll not wait anymore. We can kick off the session. And as we do that, maybe I could start off by just giving us a run of the show so that at least you have a clue of what to expect. Just a minute. Okay, that's from the ECA team, and they're giving me some directions on some of the things that I need to note. Thank you very much. Sorry for that interruption. And so just to go towards the run of the show is to say that we will start off, of course, with a welcome and introduction of this particular side event. And then after that, we'll have opening remarks and context setting that will be done by Madam Carol Osero Agengo, and she's the co-chair of the 2024 United Nations Civil Society Conference, and also she's African Regional Representative of LPAGE International. And Caroline and Nudora, for those that know Nudora, have been working as the co-chairs of the UN CSO Summit that is going to take place on the 9th and the 10th of May here in Nairobi. And I'll take this opportunity to welcome most of you, and we look forward to a great civil society conference. After that, we'll have a panel discussion. I know it's a virtual meeting, but technology has enabled us to have panel discussions. And so we'll be able to hear from 3 panelists. And this will be Khalid Baudali, the presiding officer from AU ECOSOC. Khalid, most welcome to this call, and we look forward to hearing from you. Also, we'll have...
Good morning, and thank you.
Thank you, Khalid. Also, we'll have Nuro Maro, GCAP Youth Constituency group in Tanzania. Most welcome, Nuro Maro. And we'll have Oyebisi Babatunde Olesei, who is the Executive Director, Nigerian Network of NGOs. Most welcome, Oyebisi. And then after that, we'll have remarks by respondents. So we'll have respondents who will come in after the panel discussion. And this will be Marcellus Carlos Akpovo. I hope I pronounce your names right. He is the East African Regional Representative, OHCR, sorry. And then after that, we'll have Professor Tim Murithi, who is the head of Peace Building Initiatives Program at the Institute of Justice Reconciliation in Cape Town. And so we are very, very glad to have you, Professor Tim Murithi. And again, we'll also have Javier Suraskai, Director of Research at CEPEI, based in Argentina. Most welcome to see you, and good to see you, Javier. And then after that, we'll have an open discussion as we are going on with this side event. We'd want to encourage all of you just to comment if there's something great coming out. If you have a thought, if you have a question, feel free to sort of just write on the chat. But also later on, we can have an open discussion, and feel free to raise your questions, your comments, your additions to this conversation. And then lastly, we'll have a closing remark from Stephen Lamoni, who is with the C4UN, the Coalition for the UN We Need, who's the advocacy coordinator. And thank you, Stephen, for being with us here. And so just to begin this meeting is to briefly say that this meeting is hosted by the SDG Kenya Forum, which is a civil society coalition based in Nairobi, Kenya, and working to champion the 17 SDG goals with communities, with national government, with private sector, development partners and other sectors, just to ensure that sustainable development goals from a national level can be well represented by the multi-stakeholder. And again, our co-hosted the coalition for the UN We Need, that is here with us, members of the coalition of the UN We Need, and our role as the coalition for the UN We Need is to ensure that we can continuously showcase systems that within, especially the UN, how to ensure that we can have accountability in these systems and come up with more and more interventions, but also strategic engagement between civil society organizations and engagements within these different sectors with government and others. And so today's event, again, seeks to sort of come up with or to address three main objectives. And from an African perspective, this is the first one, how to generate recommendations on how the key global governance proposal, including the institutional, legal, normative, and operational systems to be adapted in the Pact for the Future. I'm sure that you are all aware about the Pact for the Future. I'll ask colleagues who are here with me to share some of these critical documents for this side event in the chat for those who have not interacted with them. But if you have looked at the concept note, you'll find a lot of these links are within the concept note for you to further look into them. And so this is more for us to ensure that we can influence the Declaration of the Future Generation, the Global Digital Compact at the Summit of the Future, and ensuring that the different stakeholders, including civil society, academia, think tanks, foundations, are actively involved in this particular process. The second objective is to identify synergies and interlinkages between the AU Agenda 2063, the UN SDGs, and our common agenda to accelerate the implementation on behalf of the African people and that of the continent at the Summit of the Future. And so with the Summit of the Future coming up, how then do we position Africans' agenda? And also the third and the last one is on raising awareness on the Summit of the Future and to reflect on the collective role of African state, multilateral institution, African civil society organizations to making a meaningful contribution to the summit and its outcomes. And so thank you very much. And I hope that as we go on, we could be able to address and meet the objectives of this particular side event. Maybe lastly to mention that we are glad that this is being held on the sidelines of the 10th session of the African Regional Forum on Sustainable Development. And we are glad that a lot of colleagues here and others already in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and will be participating in the 10th session of the African Regional Forum. That said events have begun, but the official meeting will be next week. And so without any further ado, I'm trying to check if Carol is already on the call. Yes, she's here. I want to welcome Carol for the opening remarks and the context setting. Just to say, Carol, as I said before, I don't know if she has joined the call. She has been very instrumental alongside Nudora, ensuring that the UN Civil Society Conference can really be a conference that we can all be proud of, and also we can ensure that the different civil society organizations from all over the world can participate, but also we can come out with concrete decisions and change the scenario of the civil society organizations in a positive way. Thank you, Carol, for making time, and we are looking forward to your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Florence, and thank you to all who are on the call. I will stand on existing protocol and just say that it's exciting for me to be part of this conversation as on the sidelines of the Africa Regional Forum on Sustainable Development, which I'll be attending in person, at least one day of the same next week. And I look forward to the discussions. And I will speak specifically to the issues of the UN Civil Society Conference in support of the Summit of the Future that will be held in just under 3 weeks from now. And before I delve into that, to also introduce myself in my
Hello, Carol. We don't seem to hear you. Maybe we give Carol a minute. I hope colleagues can hear me. Yes, you can,
Yes.
Xavier? Okay, great. I thought I had dropped myself. Okay, thank you so much. So I think Carol is having a technical challenge. I see she's dropped, and I know she will be back in a minute.
Florence, I'll be happy to say a few words about the conference. Meanwhile, just to introduce the conference if you wish.
Yes, Jeff. In fact, I wanted to call upon you, and then I saw your face. Thank you. You can as Carol comes back. Thank you.
Sure. So, as Carol was beginning to say, we're very pleased to be partnering with the UN Department of Global Communication, in close coordination with civil society communities represented through the Coalition for the UN We Need, through the major groups and other stakeholders, which have a mandated role in the negotiations of the Summit of the Future, the Global NGO Executive Committee, to organize the 2024 UN Civil Society Conference in support of the Summit of the Future, as you said, Florence, to be held in Nairobi on the 9th and 10th of May. The Nairobi Conference seeks to increase awareness, ambition, and accountability for the Summit of the Future beyond New York, and support the amplification of diverse voices and initiatives to inform an inclusive pact for the future. With the conference taking place in Nairobi, we seek to include as many voices from the Global South as possible, especially from the grassroots and those who feel unseen and unheard worldwide. In addition to a co-chair summary comprising key messages from the Nairobi conference, a key element we will contribute to the broader processes are civil society-generated multi-sectoral impact coalitions. The objectives of these coalitions and the outcome of the conference in general will be the following. One, offer a platform for a more collaborative approach to meaningful engagement among civil society, stakeholders, the UN, and member states. Two, to serve as a space to coalesce different initiatives that may be pursuing similar goals toward and beyond the Pact for the Future, in order to diversify their membership and strengthen their outcomes. And third, create and encourage ongoing engagement with a forward-looking plan of action focused on impact and implementation of specific governance reform proposals. I note that Carol is back online, so I'll be happy to give the floor back to you, Florence, and Carol. Thank you.
Thank you. You can go on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry for that. We've had a serious power challenge in the country in the last 24 hours, and I think that's something that we probably need to take up with our governments on a serious note. That said, however, I was saying that I work with HelpAge International, where I lead the global initiatives, and I'm the Africa regional representative. I also sit on the major groups and other stakeholders that provides the context for my participation in this process. And I came in as Jeff was speaking to the impact coalitions. And so I will go back a little bit and speak about the objectives that we set out. My co-chair and I, Nudara, and I set out 3 objectives that we think will lead us to the impact coalitions that Jeff was speaking to, and also to re-energizing the collaboration between civil society, among civil society, but also between civil society, government, academia, think tanks, and foundations, because we must co-create the future together. And in the spirit of multilateralism, we must also reflect a multi-stakeholder engagement. They are not mutually exclusive, but rather mutually reinforcing. And so our three objectives were: one, that the conference would be inclusive. Civil society is diverse, and the diversity of civil society adds to the strength of civil society. We also recognize that we cannot bring the whole of civil society from around the globe into the small space of the UN compound in Nairobi, but we can bring the totality of their ideas together. And for that reason, we have curated a program that will enable broad participation, that is inclusive, and which will increase the awareness, ambition, and accountability for the Summit of the Future beyond Nairobi, but also beyond New York, and support the amplification of diverse voices and initiatives to inform an inclusive pact for the future. We also want the conference to be impactful, and that is why we have come up with the idea of the issue-based multi-stakeholder impact coalitions that Jeffrey was speaking to. And we want to bring together the action of member states, civil society, academia, think tanks, foundations, and the private sector to champion, act on, and push forward specific issue areas or big ticket reforms proposed in the consensus language of the pact. We are cognizant of the fact that member states drive the implementation of the aspirations of the pact, but we also know that civil society plays a critical role, and that has already been spoken to by Jeff, and that is something that the UN recognizes fully. So we want to contribute to the implementation of the aspirations contained in the Pact for the Future and the related mechanisms or the related processes that led to the Global Digital Compact and the Declaration on Future Generations. We also want the conference to be innovative, and we want to seize the moment of the conference as an opportunity to innovate the way civil society interacts with intergovernmental processes. We want to showcase an effective model of intergenerational cooperation and solidarity. We want to champion diverse expertise and want to do something new in this multi-stakeholder, civil society hosted impact coalitions. So the hub for the impact coalitions that we will create will help in framing, not only offering a platform for more collaboration and approach, a more collaborative approach to meaningful engagement, but it will also serve as a space to coalesce different initiatives that may be pursuing similar goals towards and beyond the Pact for the Future, so that we can, as we move along, diversify the membership, strengthen the outcomes, and allow these coalitions to grow as the implementation of the Pact continues. We also want to create and encourage ongoing engagement. There is a lot of engagement between civil society actors, but also between civil society and member states. We want to encourage that engagement with a forward-looking plan of action focused on impact and implementation of specific governance reform proposals. That does not take away the role that civil society plays as a check and balance to governmental action, but it allows for the reality to play out in these spaces where government and civil society interact. And so we are looking forward to the conference, and we would also like to come up with a summary of what will have come out of the 2 days. We cannot negotiate an outcome. Civil society is too broad and diverse for that, but we can provide recommendations that will be taken up by the different actors who will be at the conference and who are also interested at the conference. So we have curated a 2-day program and a pre-conference local mobilization day that will happen for civil society in Kenya on the 8th. And we also know that there are several other organizations and institutions that have put together pre-conference activities. We welcome that, and we know that the discussions will add on to the discussions that will be held on the 9th and 10th of May. In the 2-day conference, we will have one day that will look at civil society workshops around the 5 chapters of the Pact for the Future. We'll also have a chance to interact with the co-facilitators of the 3 processes, the Pact, the co-facilitators of the summit who are in charge of the Pact, the co-facilitators of the Global Digital Compact, and the co-facilitators of the Declaration on Future Generations. It will be a brilliant moment for civil society to speak to the co-facilitators and bring in the views of those who will not be in the room, but so that the co-facilitators can hear firsthand what civil society is thinking about around the 5 chapters and be able to reflect this to the member states' negotiation processes that are currently ongoing. On the 2nd day, we will host the impact coalitions, and this will be a chance for the various coalitions to come together, think through the ideas that are already forming, think through new ideas, and we expect that new coalitions will be formed at the conference and beyond the conference. The conference for us is an event. It is not an end in itself. It's an event that will be a springboard to the summit, and after the summit, beyond the summit, into the implementation of the outcomes or the aspirations contained in the Pact for the Future. And so we look forward to an interesting and an exciting moment. We also have exhibitions and off-site events. The conference will not be hybrid. We will have online participation through webcasts, but we will also have off-site events that will reflect objectives of the conference. So that is a broad stroke, that's one broad sweep at what we expect for the conference, and we look forward to your engagement, your ideas, as we move towards the conference in less than 2 weeks' time. So thank you all very much, and I look forward to engaging in this process.
Thank you so much, Carol. That was very, very comprehensive. And of course, we gave you a bit more time because there's a lot of questions on the conference. And so we are hoping that a lot of the participants here and also those that are watching online have had a very good summary of what the conference is all about, the UN Civil Society Conference. But as we are going on, in case you have any questions, Carol is still here. Please type out so that Carol can just look at the chat and be able to respond, because we get so many inquiries, questions, people asking different, wanting to understand different things about the conference. Please take advantage that Carol is on this call and should be able to do that, to answer all of you as much as possible. So Carol, thank you very much for that comprehensive presentation, but also information for the participants here. And so, because I know we don't have so much time, that's always a challenge with online events. You have to be very, very fast. I want to bring in the panel, and I'd want if the panel could just put on their cameras. Thank you, Khalid. I can already see you. Nuro Maro, if you could put on your camera, and also Oyebisi. And so, nice to see you, Nuro. And so we could start off with Khalid, and this is based on the this particular event's objectives and also the different institutions that you're representing. Khalid comes from the AU, Nuro comes from the civil society, but the youth component, very, very rich engagement there with young people. And Oyebisi, of course, is somebody who comes from the civil society organizations, been here for many years and understands all these processes and everything about the Summit of the Future, the UN Civil Society Conference, and how Africa, for example, can position itself. And so we'd want to hear from the three of you. I'll start off with Khalid and then Nuru and then Oyebisi. So maybe just broad perspectives, but what is it that Africa, how can Africa position itself for this particular opportunity, which you were saying is an one in a lifetime generational opportunity for civil society organizations engagement, and how can we partner best with governments, with different development partners and all stakeholders? Khalid, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Florence, and good morning to you all. I bring you greetings from the Economic, Social, and Cultural Council. It's good to see Ms. Carol, and thank you for your clarification already, and also Ms. Jeffrey, the very familiar face, my good friend. It was nice to see you again. As we convene for this Momentum online side event hosted by the Coalition for the UN at the 10th session of the African Regional Forum on Sustainable Development, it's my privilege and an honor to address you on behalf of the Economic, Social, and Cultural Council of the African Union. ECOSOC stands as a testament to the commitment to amplify the voices of civil society organizations across Africa. Since the establishment in July 2004, ECOSOC has remained unwavering in its mission to champion people-centric approach to governance, ensuring that the diverse perspective and contribution of African citizens shaped our continent's policy-making landscape. Reflecting on its journey, ECOSOC has continuously evolved to become a vital bridge between the African Union and civil society. From its inaugural launch in March 2005 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, graced by eminent leaders like His Excellency Chief Olusegun Obasanjo and late Professor Wangari Maathai, to the establishment of its first permanent General Assembly in September in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. ECOSOC has been at the forefront of straightening this crucial partnership. Today, amidst the myriad challenges and promising prospects encapsulated within the overreaching theme of this gathering, straightening the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Agenda 2063 at the Summit of the Future for a networked and inclusive multilateralism, ECOSOC resolutely reaffirms its unwavering commitment to amplifying the voices of African civil society in charting the trajectory of our continent's future. The objective delineated for this session resonates profoundly with ECOSOC's fundamental mandate, and we undertake a comprehensive assessment and advancements, obstacles, and opportunities to the realization of the Agenda 2030 and the 2063. It's imperative that we prioritize, acknowledge enhancements, advocate for the implementation of efficiencies policy framework, and engage in deliberation aimed at catalyzing transformative initiative capable of fostering holistic and expedited implementation on the grand scales. The Summit of the Future presents a unique opportunity to redefine global governance and recalibrate international cooperation. And as we prepare to participate in the UN Civil Society Conference and the Summit of the Future in Nairobi, Kenya, ECOSOC stands resolutely prepared to facilitate robust African involvement in the furnish African paramount concerns and contributions to the summit. And it is with great satisfaction that we announce to this esteemed audience our recent endeavors, and the 28th of March, we convened the Continental Dialogue centered at the Summit of the Future. Subsequently, we received an impressive outflows of over 100 written submissions from both African citizens and members of the diaspora, all aimed at enriching the initial draft of the Pact of the Future. Our dedicated team is diligently, collating and synthesizing this invaluable input. We anticipate the official participation of the resultant document on the 8th of May, 2024 in Nairobi, Kenya. On the 8th of May also, we are also hosting a high-level curriculum on international peace and security as a side event to the UN Civil Society Forum. Let me here extend an invitation to all parties who would already be in Nairobi to join us in this dialogue. Also in July 2024, we are officially commemorating the 20th anniversary of ECOSOC in Accra, Ghana. We will be hosting a side event on this Summit of the Future. So please feel free to join us. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, and I will not be long in my conclusions. With profound gratitude, I extend my heartfelt appreciation to the distinguished organizers, namely the Coalition for the UN We Need, the SGD's Kenya Forum, and our esteemed partners for their invaluable efforts in convening this pivotal dialogue. This gathering stands as a testament to our collective commitment to fostering meaningful discourse and action toward a future where every individual finds their place, unhindered by barriers and propelled by the principle of equality, inclusivity, and sustainability. Let us all embrace this moment as an opportunity to reinforce our shared value and embark on a journey toward a world that leaves no one behind. And I thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Khalid Baudali, and pass our gratitude to the AU ECOSOC for the commitment, continued commitment to ensure that civil society organizations in Africa can participate in this, the African Union processes, but also can be vibrant at national level. We appreciate that, and thank you for your remarks. And of course, talking about how we can redefine global governance in this particular process of the Summit of the Future. I'd want to usher in Nuru Maro, who's a youth representative, and it will be good, Nuru, for us to hear from you how young people engaged in this process, and what are some of the maybe some of the things that we have not considered within the process, and how can we do this effectively? So you have the floor, Nuru.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Pleased to be in this platform. As introduced, my name is Nuru. Greetings from the Tanzania Human Rights Defenders Coalition, by today here, who is a member of the GCAP, Global Call to Action Against Poverty. A member of the Global Council representing youth. And with this year theme, I would like to focus my discussion on reinforcing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals and the Agenda 2063. Because I'm a youth, I wanted to highlight few issues about the African youth, like just to memorize ourselves that over 60% of the African population is under age of 25. And with this population, considering the Agenda 2030, by 2030 itself, it will be more than the youth population, 40% of the youth population. What does this mean? It means that we, the youth, we are the future. We are the drivers of the future, because we have the opportunity to address all the challenges which are facing Africa, but also which are facing the global currently, when we see the issues of unemployment, when we see the issue of for instance, climate change and associated issues, when we see inequalities, poverty, gender-based violence, when we see security challenge, we the youth are in a position to address this challenge. And I want to call for the global attention, global community attention, the civil society, the government, the private sector, to focus on investing on youth. So coming back to the Africa, when we look to Africa, Africa is a place of great natural, human, cultural, and entrepreneur richness. When we see in the global economies, we see all continents targeting Africa for their richness. And however, the inequalities are lifting us behind and limiting the access of opportunities to the future. So I wanted also to focus on the challenges which are associated with the international financial architecture as we are looking to the Summit of the Future. So as one of the key discussion and key points in discussion, to think how are we addressing these challenges, especially on international financial architectures, reforms, to address the challenges which are facing youth in Africa, and to address all of these challenges. I don't want to dig much on the challenge because we have been discussing all of these, of poverty, about unemployment, about, we see, for taking just a few examples, like we see dangerous groups like the Al-Shabaab, they are employing a lot of youth. But why are the youth, instead of investing in technology, in agriculture, in mining sector, with the blue economy, why are they joining the terroristic group? It's because of the financial inequalities, and it's because of the inequalities in accessing financial opportunities. And therefore, even if African youth, they have the knowledge, even if they have resources, their resources remain unreached, and they cannot reach their full potentials because of the global financial architectures which are framing African to remain dependent to Western countries. I will give you 4 examples. For instance, in 2021, with $650 billion US, which was provided by the IMF, Africa only received 34 billions, which is only 5%. You can see that, while Western countries received $160 billion. And you see, African, we have population of approximately 1.2 billion, while the Western is almost 500 million. So we see these inequalities. So going to the Summit of the Future, and with the Nairobi UN and the Nairobi CSO conference, let us think as civil societies, how are we shaping the UN we need, and the African we want, to come up with this discussion to restructure the international financial architectures so as it can be inclusive. Because in the in the SDG agenda, we are advocating to equalities. We are advocating to leave no one behind. We also, the youth of Africa, we don't want to be left behind. I see potentials, African in the youth investing technology currently, and I see people advancing in agriculture. I see people advancing in the blue economy. But these structures are making us to lag behind, and I have a call to all stakeholders, CSOs, our government, to take initiatives, taking these agendas from the African Union to the UN, because the UN is for all of us. And when you're discussing the issues with the global politics and economy, we should not only tick the boxes. When we talk about ending inequalities, should not be only ticking boxes, or it should not be for a certain category of the people, but considering all of us, including people, youth, women, children, elderly, people from all countries, Western, Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean. All of us should be in board. My call now, I'm calling for the government to act and to create sound enabling environments and regulatory framework for the meaningful participation of all of us, including CSU, private sectors, and also thinking about boosting the public-private investment, because for me, I believe in financial architectures, because even if we will continue discussing challenge every day, without discussing the solution, we are not solving the problem. And if we continue, we have very nice policies, but if we don't inject a fund in it, there will remain plans, it will remain to be policies and good laws, but we will continue facing the same challenge. But also, I will also stress on harmonizing regulation, policies, and the procedures to enable African countries to invest across the borders, because now Africa has become a hub of other continents to invest on us, but we are not investing back. But I also have a concern.
Have some issues.
Sorry, because of time.
Yes, thank you for now. Back to you. If I get a chance, maybe I can conclude my discussion. Thank you.
I'm so sorry to cut you short. You're so passionate and in so many videos about people. We appreciate this very, very good background, what young people are grappling with in the continent of Africa and how to address those. My sincere apologies, but we have to move to the next speaker. Oyebesi, you're most welcome, and I know you have vast experience and has been with civil society organizations for very, very many years, and just to welcome you to give your interventions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Florence, and to thank the other panelists for setting the scene for some of the conversations that I will have today. One is to mention that if we are truly going to get anywhere, I think the time now is ripe for us to now start thinking of how to balance confrontation with collaboration, especially with the kind of relationship that exists between government and civil society. Understanding that, on the African continent, poverty is the cruelest here, and we now need our governments to move the muscle, linking this to what Nuru was talking about on some developmental milestones that can help ensure that we bring a majority of Africans out of poverty, and also ensuring that we can provide decent jobs to the young or the youth population that we have. And the part that we are talking about now would really require the expertise, insight, foresight, and input of civil society. But how do we get into the room? Getting into the room would mean that we're using organs such as the instrument of ECOWAS, the instrument of the African Union, and also, the platform that ECOWAS provides for us. And that's why I'm glad that we have ECOSOC in the room today. Because my thinking is that both Agenda 2063 and also ECOWAS Vision 2050, they are both regional documents that helps to show the Africa that we would like to see. But that, the SDGs provides that multilateral anchor for us, again, as people of the world to navigate many of the developmental challenges that we have. So that's why it is important that we pay attention to the pact. It is not necessarily an area where as civil society we would have, the stamina to keep up with the conversation. But, we need some capacity strengthening there, being able to keep up with all of the conversations and being able to sit with governments at our capitals and also sometimes at the UN to say, hey, this is what we are thinking as civil society, and this is how the present conversations can shape national development or can shape regional development, as it were. Important also is the fact that there are new challenges that the world now faces, from climate change to right respecting artificial intelligence. These are conversations that we must find ways of ensuring that they are in the pact. Of course, the pact should help us to turbocharge, like the Secretary General has said, turbocharge attainment or implementation of the SDGs. But we must focus on how do we also address the new challenges that we are seeing, especially around artificial intelligence. What those regulation of technology before the advent of artificial intelligence, what lessons can we learn there? And how can we use that to ensure that we have a world where rights are respected and that, we are able to also bring many out of poverty without leaving anyone behind. I do think that the pact must remain ambitious, and that's why when we get to Nairobi in the next couple of weeks, it must not be just a talk shop, it must be a workshop. And we must use the energies in Nairobi to be able to move civil society thinking, civil society resources, as it were, to ensure that whatever pact we have is ambitious, but that pact itself also helps our government to renew their commitments to the attainment of the SDGs, and that as civil society, as businesses, and also as government, we have indicators that can measure how we have all been able to contribute to the attainment of the SDGs. I'll hand over back to you, Florence.
Thank you, Oyebesi. Thank you so much for bringing in some of the strategies that civil society organizations ought to be using, especially on artificial intelligence, and how can we harness that as civil society organizations. And I'm really liking some of these conversations from the panelists, and maybe we'll ask you to share with us some of those ideas so that in written form, so that we can compile them into a report kindly. Nuru, there's so much from you, and I know you didn't even finish everything, so maybe you could share with us some of the other points, and everything that you shared with us. We'd be happy to have that, Oyebesi, and also from the AU ECOSOC. And so, colleagues, I want us to transition to the respondents. We have respondents, 3 of them, and so that's why I'm trying to make sure that we can utilize the remaining time and also have an open discussion. But before that, if you could just put on your camera for a minute, those who are able to do so, we take a photo. We don't get to the end, and then we forgot to document all of us that came to this meeting. And it's always good when you see a face that you smile a bit. I can see so many faces that are very familiar, people we've worked with in this movement for many years. And so, Mwendwa, tell me once you have the photo, and then we can move on. Those who are able to come on camera, please do. Are we ready for the photo? We're wanting more colleagues. I'm seeing empty boxes. We want to see your actual faces where possible, and a smile like Jeff. Jeff is and Nuru are smiling very, very hard. Even Khalid. Okay, there we are. Okay, Mwendo, I hope you've gotten the photo. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, colleagues. Thank you for allowing us to take or to capture this moment. And so now we'll move on to Marcel Carlos Akpovo, and my sincere apologies. I'm sure I've butchered your name many times here. The East Africa Regional Representative of OHCHR. And you're welcome. And then Professor Tim Murithi will come next, followed by Javier. Thank you very much. Marcel, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Florence, but also thank you for mistreating so much my name and then the name of my organization. No, I'm Marcel Akpovo, and I'm the regional director for the UN office for the High Commissioner for Human Rights in East Africa. And then I also serve as a representative to the African Union. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm not too sure how much time I have, but I have a test to deliver. So please bear with me, and I'll try as much as I can to be quick and then fast. I stand by the established protocol to tell all of you that it is my pleasure to join you today and then share my reflections, broadly speaking, but also in some way in relation to what I have heard from the panelists so far. This gathering is taking place at a critical juncture in the implementation of the UN Agenda 2030 and the AU Agenda 2063, which, as you all know, benefited immensely from the civil society organization and the youth participation during their design stage. As you also all know, progress on the SDG and the human rights is in a very, very grave peril in Africa now and many other parts of the world. And for the first time in a generation, global progress on reducing poverty is in reverse because of the multiple shocks we have witnessed in a few years. And some of the panelists have already mentioned this before me. This is also, with no doubt, a human rights crisis that we are facing, as the enjoyment of economic, civil, cultural, political, and social rights by right holders, especially those left behind, have been immensely affected. The 17 SDGs are underpinned, as you know, by economic, social, civil, cultural, and political rights, and social rights as well, the right to development. And this calls for systemic applications of the human rights-based approach to all our efforts to implement and accelerate the SDGs, as was also stressed by the UN Secretary General in his call to action for human rights. My dear friends, I hear many of you, but I also want to say that, as some of you might be aware of, the UN, my High Commissioner, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, has recently unveiled his vision for the future, where the value of a human right as a path for solution, to renew global quality governance anchored in multilateralism was reaffirmed, based, of course, on the input and pledge collected from multiple stakeholders in the context of the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which took place in December last year. One of the 8 messages that stood out in the vision statement included the need to nurture the strong and diverse global movement for human rights that we have, which definitely include not only governmental and state responsibility and engagement, but also civil society. The nature of the challenge that we are facing demand that we invest in strong multi-stakeholder partnership, integrated solution, and proactive leadership. It is therefore clear that a whole of society approach involving government, the private sector, civil society organization, youth, children, and international entities is essential to bring about the just and an inclusive society. States committed to deliver specifically under the SDG 16, as well as the broader UN Agenda 2030 and then African Union Agenda 2063. In this respect, I think that I will beg your indulgence to allow me to stress that other than being a fundamental right, meaningful, inclusive, and then safe participation, including of civil society at all levels, from global to local, is a precondition for achieving development, ensuring peace and security, and realizing human rights. And for this to occur, we at the OHCHR, we strongly believe in investing in enabling in African civil society space, online and offline, is critical as it fosters trust between institutions and then people and builds resilience. And the safety and security of people and civil society actors in Africa are key. And we will not hear from many relevant voices if people do not feel safe when speaking up, especially in the UN effort to ensuring human rights, peace, security, and development. Apart from detecting and denouncing reprisal for cooperation with the UN, more systematically, we must move towards a stronger protection mindset. For instance, certain participation formats expose individuals more than others, and certain digital security tools can have some protective values. Thinking about such steps must become routine in our everyday work. Despite the challenges faced by civil societies in Africa, those entities, the civil society, play a critical bridging role between government and the population, as they serve by bringing to the table the voices of diverse communities, including those who usually are least ahead in the context of the SDG implementation, and then by drawing attention to critical human rights deficit on the ground. Our Secretary General was clear in his address on our common agenda report that stated that the international organization need to better listen to the people to build trust. And furthermore, through the Secretary General call to action for human rights and the UN guidance is noted on protection and promoting civic space, the UN has committed to stepping up its approach to ensure safe spaces and an inclusive participation in UN processes where every voice counts, including intergovernmental forum and the voices of civil societies as well. Yet, current engagement modality very much differ. Please allow me to finish quickly, please. Differ from one UN to an AU process to the other, and procedure, registration, accreditation, or privacy and security related in terms of accessibility of a venue, lack of resources for meaningful engagement, or an equal treatment for specific groups. Barrier to effective and meaningful engagement remain, but a different pillar of the UN and the AU have also developed positive practices. African civil society organization, youth group, women organization, traditional leaders, intellectual, and human rights defenders have been at the forefront of pushing for transformational change on social, economic, and environmental and political issues at national, regional, and global level, as we know. But grassroots movements are also coming of age, of course, and then we need to extend to them a lot of strong support based on their needs. And finally, I feel that one of the very key messages that we needed to really rely behind in this stage of preparatory stage for the Summit of the Future is to create a proactive partnership and participation all around the initiative to ensure that the civil society organization are heard in the summits, and that the voices of the people from the ground are also listened to. In the end, I would like to encourage the civil society organizations and all stakeholders for strong alliances and utilize existing platform at various levels to influence and shaping up the part of the future, including by asserting the centrality of social, economic, civil, cultural, and political rights, as well as the right to development to tackle the multiple challenges that we face at all levels. We need their sustained engagement to ensure that a human rights principle like equality, non-discrimination, and divisibility, universality, and inalienabilities and then accountability are of the core of the initiative to bring about the better global order that we are seeking through a new and renewed multilateralism in the context of realizing the SDGs. I will stop there because I understand that the time is over. So I thank you for offering me the opportunity, not necessarily to respond to the panelists, but also to offer a perspective of our contribution to the summit, which is based on human rights centrality in the sense of the decision that may definitely be taken affecting the global south, but particularly the African continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcel. Sorry, I have this police role because everybody has to speak, and I don't want panelists going away because this ECA management of the Zoom, I think once the time is gone, we will all be evicted from this Zoom. So today might not be the most favorite. I'm so sorry about that. But thank you so much. And Marcel, you've shared very, very critical just strategies, advice to civil society in terms of strong alliances. And again, we'll be looking forward to maybe what you've presented so that colleagues here can be able to have a look later on, because this has been maybe very short, and then we can always take away some of the good strategies that you have been able to share with us today. I want to move to Professor Tim Muriithi, who is the head of peace building interventions. And then Tim Muriithi was also part of the African We Want and the United Nations We Need pre-meeting that happened in Abuja, Nigeria. And Dr. Muriithi, Professor Muriithi, you have the floor. Most welcome.
Thank you, Florence. I will do my best to save on some time. I can see you under tremendous pressure as the moderator of this session, but congratulations to all the organizers for convening this very important engagement. I also commend all those who are doing the heavy lifting behind the scenes, the remarkable work that is getting us to where we are. Jeffrey, Richard, and Florence, good to see you all again. My hope is that the Summit of the Future, UN Summit of the Future Action Days in September will not be the end of this very important process of bringing about genuine change and transformation of the multilateral system. I think a big challenge for us as civil society actors have always been on the outside, looking in almost into this forum of 193 UN member states. And despite all the processes that are taking place, and the tremendous work of our colleagues such as Jeffrey and so on, that we really hope that some of the outputs that are and the ideas that are emerging from civil society will find their way into the UN Pact of the Future. I think this is an issue we raised in Abuja as well during our conversation. Even the UN CSO meeting itself is being convened by the UN Department for Information rather than the more central, and coordinating executive office of the Secretary General, or key political, socioeconomic, departments. So I think we will be faced with a challenge to ensure that in the Summit of the Future, we actually, as civil society, also push for some big picture issues, articulate a vision of the future of multilateralism. And the pact at this stage does not necessarily have that vision. And as African people, African governments, African friends, intergovernmental organizations, I think we need to be also putting this issue on the table in terms of what are we really talking about going forward. The fact that when the United Nations system, which is really the bedrock of the current multilateral order, was established in June 1945 in San Francisco in the US, only 3 African countries were independent and present: Liberia, Ethiopia, Egypt, and South Africa was still under the yoke of the brutal apartheid system. So the optics, just in terms of the inclusivity of the creation of the current multilateral system, and today, if we narrow down particularly the issue of peace and security, 60% of the issues on the UN Security Council relate to Africa. Yet Africa, as a continent of 1.4 billion people, does not have a single, permanent representation on the council. When UK and France, both of 67 million people each, still retain a veto, which clearly is a sign that the system is essentially now anachronistic. We're also seeing the collapse of the global collective security system and in its exclusionary and unrepresentative nature of the council is part of the the problem. We just saw this like a day ago, the US vetoing the creation of the Palestinian state. So I think African civil society, African actors have to make the case, a very strong argument for the fundamental transformation of the multilateral system. I would argue that we are in a San Francisco moment, and I have said this before. I said it in Abuja, and I believe that there's a reluctance, maybe by some of our friends, particularly in the global north, to see the fact that we are in a San Francisco moment, which means we are looking at the fundamental transformation of the global multilateral system, including the global financial architecture, IMF, World Bank, World Trade, as we discussed in Abuja. And the UN Secretary General, by the way, is not far from this idea. He has pushed this UN 2.0 notion in our common agenda. And he has also called for invoking Article 109 of the United Nations Charter, or he has called for a charter review to even look specifically at the issue of the UN Security Council. So I think this general conference to review the UN Charter with an emphasis on the Security Council is definitely a pathway that we should pick up from the UN Secretary General. And my hope, my wish is that it will be one of the outcome policy recommendations in the Summit of the Future in 5 months' time, because then it will give us some traction in terms of moving forward with a broader conversation about how do we build a multilateral system that is fit for purpose in the 21st century. I mean, some have argued, just to begin to conclude, Florence, that our government, this is not the right time to be talking about a charter review because of all the geopolitical tension that exists, and invoking Article 109, would generate more dissension rather than convergence. But in fact, this is precisely during times of great crisis. And I would say when we listen to the nuclear saber rattling that is happening, particularly in the Ukraine context, that the prospects for great change and transformation are really most likely when we are facing such great crises as we are at the moment, including the climate emergency, refugee crisis, food insecurity, so on and so forth. So I think it's incumbent upon us also as African civil society, then from our perspective, to push for some of this big picture thinking going forward. Florence, let me just stop there. And obviously we can engage in the conversation dialogue session going forward. Thank you, Florence.
Thank you so much, Professor Murithi. And I acknowledge the fact that you have so much to offer in terms of the issues of the multilateralism and how we can position ourselves as civil society organizations. And we'll be looking forward to engaging you even continuously, of course, in the upcoming UN Summit, UN Civil Society Conference, but also in the Summit of the Future, and just advising and positioning strategies for civil society organizations, different thematic groups, and how best they could engage in some of these very critical processes, and how that can, of course, work with our own governments. So let me move to Javier Suraski, the Director of Research at CEPEI. You're most welcome, Javier. And then colleagues, as Javier comes in, kindly just post your questions, any clarification. You can also direct them to the specific speakers, be it Tim, be it Marcel, be it Nuru, just all Oyebesi, all the speakers that spoke, Khalid from AU ECOSOC, anybody that maybe you have a direct question to, will open up the floor for you to be able to either speak or we can read from the chat. I really wanted us to have an open conversation. Thank you, and most welcome, Javier. Javier, you seem to be muted. Can somebody confirm that it's Javier we can't hear? Yeah.
Florence, we can hear you.
Yeah, you're
Okay,
right.
okay.
You're right. Maybe he can remove his headphones because sometimes it interferes.
Yeah, maybe Javier, it's your headphones. You could try without the headphones.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, yes. Great to hear your voice. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. I promise I will be very, very brief. But anyway, and I was saying that I'm so happy from being here. This particular regional meeting is very important for me. It's very close to me. Let me explain you why in a very short personal note. My wife is an Afro-descendant, so Africa's soul, but also Africa's struggles and joy is part of my everyday life, and I feel very close of your continent. So let me start saying that I'm from CEPEI, Latin American and Caribbean think tank working across the entire region, creating data and analysis to support decision makers here that are working in issues related to sustainable development global agendas. Exactly now, I am in Santiago de Chile. Yesterday, the Latin American and the Caribbean Regional Forum came to an end, and we have had here 3 days of discussions about more or less the same issues that you are discussing. And this leads me to my first point, and maybe the more important one. I was part of some debates in the European Forum, in the Latin American and the Caribbean Forum, of course, and now I'm joining you. And what become very, very clear to me is that we more or less are facing the same problems. We want more or less the same. And the main ideas that we are sharing and our main desires are exactly the same. That is why I think it's so important to bear in mind during the Summit of the Future event that we need to highlight the regional level and the interregional connections. There is a heightened level of work between the regional and the global one, and that is the interregional cooperation and the interregional work. We need to strengthen the interregional cooperation and the interregional work if we want to have really opportunities to succeed in the work that we are pretending to move forward. That's the first thing that I wanted to highlight. The second one is related to an issue that Professor Mugariti have shared with us a few minutes ago. He talked, and I listened it a couple of times. He talked about the next Summit of the Future as a kind of new San Francisco moment. I totally agree and can understand what is behind this call, but I invite you to rethink that, and maybe what we really need to call is for a strong New York moment, because we have the UN. We are doing this inside the UN. We don't want, like many others maybe do, we don't want to go against the UN. What we are pursuing is a stronger multilateralism, a stronger UN that really can deliver. So the situation is very different than the one in San Francisco, and what we are working for is for a strong New York moment. That is an option for us. Having said that, let me just finish my participation, my reaction to what the panelists have said, sharing with you that we have spent many years discussing what we need to do. And even we have had some discussions on how to do it. Now, I think this meeting, and that is why impact coalitions could become so important. This meeting is maybe our last, or at least our very promising opportunity to start calling to action. We cannot continue just discussing issues. We should push, and we should push hard to start transforming our words in actions. That is the goal of this time. That should be the goal of this meeting. And the Civil Society Conference in Nairobi could be a very first step in this direction. We should work together. We should find our connection. We should identify our main points. And above all, we should make things happen working together. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure, really a pleasure to share this ideas with you.
Thank you so much, Javier, and thank you for representing your continent in this African meeting and speaking. And also, it's always good to do the global south, global south to global south sort of connections and peer-to-peer learning. And I know there's a lot that has been coming from the Latin America towards Africa, and tight collaborations that we've been pursuing within the African continent with the Latin American, especially among civil society organizations. Thank you so much, and for the passion, and also just the call to action. And it was a good place to end all the contributions from the panelists and all the discussants. Thank you very much. We really, really appreciate you all. And as I said before, would want you to just share with us on email, maybe just a brief of what you've been able to present, or even more details and more links to reports that we can compile and share with all the participants, but even our broader networks. We have broad networks from the different countries, from the different regions, and they will benefit from some of these strategies that are very powerful that are being shared in this particular meeting. And so maybe just to allow, I have been to meetings that never allow participants to participate, and I believe it's very, very unfair. And so I'd want us to have just a few questions, maybe just anybody that can shoot a hand up. We can have maybe just two, and then I'll come back to the all the panelists and discussants for our closing remark. So prepare maybe just a catchy phrase, a way to end this. We'll give you a minute each to be able to do that. But for now, in case there are any questions, you can shoot your hand very quickly, or we can take just one or two questions. I see the Embassy of Kenya, and so of course I'm Kenyan and I have to respect our embassy, just in case also they want to, I don't know, comment. You're most welcome. Just to acknowledge the Embassy of Kenya, in case you want the representative that is there, in case you want to have a minute, I could allow that. Any hands? Any hands? Maybe you can help me look out. I can't see.
There's a question.
So far.
There's a question on the chat from Lily Kuzimana.
Do you want to handle that? Okay, Prof, you can go ahead.
No, she wrote it. She wrote the question. I don't know if Lily can maybe just ask it, then it'll be easier.
Okay, thank you,
Sure.
Prof.
I don't know, Florence, is it okay to come in?
Yes, please.
I'm sorry, I'm not able to turn on my camera. I'm walking in the streets of New York City, but thank you for the opportunity. And thank you so much for all the speakers for sharing with us information about the conference. So I work with the Baha'i International Community, and a group of us from that organization are really looking forward to participating in the conference in person. And one of the conversations and questions that have arisen in regard to the Pact for the Future has been, how are we incorporating principles on human rights and gender equality throughout the Pact? Because there isn't a specific chapter on either gender equality or human rights. So I just wanted to ask the panelists here, because we're talking about Africa and we know the legacy of women movements on that continent, especially towards independence. But then we also know that in some countries, the strength of those movements maybe has not been fully incorporated to realizing full equality between men and women on the continent. And I think also, particularly in Kenya, there's a very powerful history of what women were able to do to achieve independence in that country. So I'm just curious from the panelists here on what their perspectives are on how can we ensure that the legacy, but also even the current activism of women trying to achieve gender equality can be incorporated or can bring strength to the Pact for the Future. It would just be interesting and helpful to hear their perspective on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lily. Prof, I see your hand is up, or is that a
Yes, yes, indeed. No, I just wanted to salute Javier and welcome him to our panel, and also thank him for the point that he made very, very briefly to say that, Javier, I completely agree with you. I am very happy to rethink the idea of us being in a San Francisco moment and to draw a line of evolution, I would say, from San Francisco to the New York Summit of the Future. And we need to be making the argument, however, that we are in a moment of fundamental change, and it's important to ensure that all of the hard work that has been done by some of our colleagues on this platform and other platforms around the world on different continents, that we don't end with the Summit of the Future in September, but we actually lay the tracks for a continuing process, I would even argue, a conversation. And for me, one of the ways to do that is to actually to get the governments themselves to embrace the idea of invoking Article 109, specifically paragraph 3, which cannot be vetoed by the permanent 5 members of the Security Council, to actually then set us up for a future general conference that can help us to really transform the United Nations, then the broader multilateral system. So that would be my point. So I believe that's why I've called for this Article 109 being a key outcome of the Summit of the Future, Pact of the Future document going forward. And we need to work hard to make sure that it gets in there somehow. Currently is not, and we need to work to get to that point. Thank you. Florence.
Thank you, Prof. I see Peter Ngure, you can just ask your question. That's the last question, and then I'll come back to the panelists for their less than 1 minute intervention. Peter, you have the floor. Peter Ngure?
Maybe I can ask his question for him then if he's not coming on. Oh, his sound is off. I can read it for you, Florence. It says, hello, this is Peter Ngure from Pathways Policy Institute.
Sorry? Oh, he's not.
Yeah, I was reading it. I was reading the response. Would you like me to read it, the question? Okay, it says, thank you all. This is Peter Ngure from Pathways Policy Institute. Amazing panel and respondents. The spaces at UN civil society conferences have always been limited for youth and civil society actors working on cross-sector issues relating to youth, health, and the environment. And he's basically making the case, or maybe putting the question, it'll be critical to see for these communities to be engaged, to be included more at the UN CSO conference in Nairobi. So I think it's more of a comment, really.
Thank you so much. And so now we'll start with Carol. It's just 30 seconds, not 1 minute for each, but all the panelists. And so you can all put your cameras as Carol starts, and then we'll go to Khalid, Nuru, Bessie, Marcel, Professor Tim, and then Javier. Okay, and also can all participants kindly put on your cameras? The media team says they think they didn't capture all of us, unfortunately, so they want to try and do it when this session is going on. Kindly, you can put on your camera again. They'll take the 3 slides. I think they only took 1 slide. Apologies for that. Those that are able to put on your cameras, please do so as the panelists conclude. Okay, Carol.
Thank you, Florence. And just to say briefly, the conference is limited in terms of the number of people who can be at the UN complex in Nairobi. It is, however, not limited to the number of ideas that can be canvassed in that space, in the off-site events, in the online events, and in Nairobi moment. Nairobi is an it's a moment, and it doesn't stop there. So there are those opportunities. But coming quickly to the issue raised by Lily, I believe there are, from the workshops that we have reviewed, there's a lot of feminist gender discussions that are going to be brought in. The issue of youth has been taken into account, but more importantly, what we're proposing as the impact coalitions that bring together multi-sectoral, integrated, intersectional, intergenerational perspectives, so that we try and tap into the broad range of issues that color civil society. We will not be able to cover everything, but this will be a launch pad into other areas of collaboration moving forward. So let's go into this space in integrated perspective.
Thank you, Carol. Khalid, let's make it very quick and very short, kindly. Khalid, you're muted. Maybe as Khalid comes.
Sorry again. Yes, I am here. I believe that in alignment with the Agenda 2063, from all the questions and our colleagues, panelists and speakers, the Premium Continental Strategic Framework for Development, this event endeavors to bolster Africa's status as a unified, resilient, and influence global entity and partners with the framework of global governance. We believe at the African Union, ECOSOC, it will delve into various facets of developments, emphasizing the attainment of sustainable development, while also prioritizing political and diplomatic engagement. With a particular focus on youth engagement, we believe that the engagement on peace and security, the climate change, etc., the event will aim also to scrutinize and strategize avenues through which African civil society, in collaboration with governments and the African Union, can effectively facilitate consensus building among nations in diverse constituencies. This collaborative effort seeks to ensure that Africa's merits, interests, and priorities spanning development goals of SDGs, youth engagement, and other initiatives are robustly represented and championed at the key international fora, including the 2024 High-Level Political Forum and the Summit of the Future. And I thank you very much, and I thank all the panelists, my fellow panelists, for their extremely important discussions and raised concerns that they have raised. Thank you.
Thank you. It's taken so long. We just wanted a tweet, a memorable tweet. Maybe Nuru, you can just say a word and then pass it to Oyebesi, something, so that we can do the closing remarks.
Okay, for me, I have two key takeaways. One is human rights, SDG 2030 and the Agenda 2030 will be realized when there is a space for everyone to address the challenge we are facing. Let's widen the space, as Mr. Marcelo proposed, to have an inclusive participation of youth, women, indigenous communities, PWDs, and everyone. The second one is on financial spaces. I'm supporting Javier's discussion on strong multilateralism, and let us realize this through a global partnership, urging developed countries, international financial institutions, and the private sectors to commit to tangible support and to collaborate more closely with the African nations to implement these reforms and address the challenge we are facing now. Thank you.
Thank you. Oyebesi, just a word, and then I'll call Stephen to do the closing remarks, and then we can see if the respondents will get a chance. Oyebesi, just one word.
Yes, I think mine will be that whatever pact is being developed must be ambitious, but also it must be implementable, and that it must also be within the context of leaving no sector behind. It must, again, be within that culture of multilateralism, multi-stakeholder platforms in being able to achieve whatever goals or whatever commitment will come out of the pact for the future itself.
Thank you, Oyebesi. Stephen, you have the floor for the closing remarks. then we'll see if there's a minute or two left. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me start by saying thank you to Florence and everyone that organized this event, as well as to the participants and to the respondents. This has been an interesting session for me. So in my concluding remarks, basically, I would like to conclude this event. No, as we conclude this event, I want to express our sincere gratitude for your active participation and insightful contributions. Your engagement highlights the urgency of reinforcing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and Agenda 2063, especially with the upcoming Summit of the Future on the horizon. This has been a challenging part for me in terms of listening and trying to capture a lot of the key messages, but I captured some, not everything. I'll give you basically a more comprehensive conclusion. But some of the key messages that I captured include investment in the youth. Government, CSOs, the private sector should prioritize in investing youth to ensure a prosperous future. Addressing youth challenges, basically address the challenges faced by African youth, such as unemployment by focusing on IFA reform, restructure the current global financial architecture to ensure inclusivity and reduce dependency on Western nations. African youth should advocate for their agendas from the AU at the UN as the UN represents all of us. Push for the big picture, issues such as Africa's lack of a permanent seat representation at the UN Security Council, and advocate for a fundamental transformation of the multilateral system, including reforms of the IFA, World Bank, and the World Trade Organization. In terms of CSO engagement and participation, create partnerships and foster participation around initiatives to ensure CSOs adhere to human rights and voices from the ground are heard. Regional cooperation, basically strengthen regional and interregional cooperation to move forward collectively. Then transform discussions into concrete actions. The CSO conference in Nairobi marks the first step in this direction. Now, moving beyond the summit, we should not conclude our efforts with just the Summit of the Future. Governments should invoke Article 109 to set us up for the future summit, ensuring sustained engagement and progress. So these are some of the key messages I captured, but there's more anyway. Our discussion today emphasized the importance of fostering multilateral smart coalitions and identifying synergies between Agenda 2063 and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. These insights will shape an inclusive and impactful future, path for the future. The upcoming Summit of the Future offers a chance to redefine global governance and cooperation to be more equitable and responsive, especially to the needs of the most vulnerable. Let's aim for a UN that truly serves people on the planet, leaving no one behind. As we move forward, capacity building is crucial for effective participation in future discussions. New challenges such as climate change, artificial intelligence, technology regulation must be addressed to uphold human rights. The path should be ambitious, action-oriented, and encourage governments to renew commitments to the SDGs. Furthermore, nurturing a strong and diverse movement of human rights, investing in and enabling African CSO space, both online and in person, and moving towards stronger protection mandates are vital steps. I encourage all to maintain this momentum leading to the Summit of the Future in September and beyond. The 69th UN Civil Society Conference offers another crucial platform for dialogue and collaboration. Let's leverage these opportunities to amplify diverse voices, foster collaboration, and drive meaningful change. In concluding, let's remain steadfast in our shared vision for a prosperous, inclusive, and sustainable future for Africa and the world. Together, we can accelerate the implementation of the 2030 Agenda and Agenda 2063. Thank you once again for your unwavering commitment of active participation at this forum. Over to you, Florence.
Thank you so much, Stephen Lamoni, and thank you to the Coalition for the Simple UN, Jeff and the team there for the work and bringing all of us together. And so participants, unfortunately, we've come to the end of this event. We hope that you're going back with a lot of inspiration, but also a lot of contacts. I see a lot of our speakers have shared their contacts within the chat box. Just take a moment and get these contacts. I see Carol has shared an email in case you have any more questions for the UN Civil Society Conference. If you have questions about C4UN, if you have questions about the Summit of the Future, all the speakers that joined us today, we want to really appreciate you all. Unfortunately, we could not get closing remarks from the respondents because our time is up, and they'll be closing us up any minute from now. So thank you very much for taking time and for staying with us until the end of this conversation. I take this opportunity on behalf of Carol and Udora and the steering committee, all these committees on this UN Civil Society, to welcome you to Nairobi. We hope that we can connect in person with most of you during the UN Civil Society Conference, and we hope that we can continue these conversations moving forward for all of us because we have to make civil society a reality, not just a talk show, but a workshop. I don't know, I think that you basically said something like that. Thank you so much, and have a lovely day, evening, or morning. Thank you very much, and yeah, have a good one. Have a good weekend. Thank you for being with us. And
thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
for the constraints. Bye.
Bye-bye.